I'm Brad King, and this is Stories in Steel. On this episode, we sit down with the maestro of color, Tom Fritz. Growing up in the sunny confines of Southern California, he knew at a young age that cars and paint were part of his destiny. Who would have thought that a conversation with his neighbor would inspire him to become one of the most prolific automotive painters on the planet? He is truly the Rembrandt of our time. This is actually a pretty special interview for me. I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time. There was another painter that was always kind of known as the painter of light, and yeah, they got it wrong. he was the painter of cottages, but he was definitely not the painter of light. What got you into? I mean, we can go way back, but what got you into automotive stuff? I always want to talk about, because that's your world right now. You're a car guy all the way. I mean, that's your world, whether it's old-fashioned or modern day, and even motorcycles. It's pretty much motorsports in general. What pointed you in that direction?
My life. In the San Fernando Valley in the early or late 50s, early 60s, cars were everywhere. It was, the valley was building out after the war, and there were cars in every garage, and everybody seemed to fix them themselves. You did have garages in town, in the little town San Fernando and Granada Hills and Reseda, and that was before the valley totally built out. So my pop fixed the family vehicles. He seemed to always be in the garage working on them. He had a 50 Ford Woody and a 56 Chevy 210 two-door, and yeah, he was always working on them. Some of my earliest memories going out to the garage, it was kind of dark in the garage, didn't have great lighting, and he had the hood open on the car, and he bent down and picked me up and held me in his arms so I could watch the valve train work. He took the valve cover off to do the work on the valves, and the valve train was running. After the war, he was a mechanic for a standard station in Glendale. So, he worked on everything, and so he had tools and all of the great smells, the greases, the solvents, everything smelled great. But yeah, so that was my earliest memories. In junior high, I had a paper route, and somehow I got the bug in me that I wanted to build a 23 T-bucket. And I don't know if it was because I got it through one of the magazines at the time, Hot Rod. I had a subscription to Hot Rod in junior high, but in there I saw a picture in an ad from Cal Automotive over in on Lancashire in Burbank, and they were the builder of the fiberglass T-buckets and the little T pickup roadsters that they had. And I convinced my dad to put me on the back of the motorcycle and to take me out, and we went out there, and I saw the operation, and I saw the T-buckets, and I saw a bunch of Allison engines and an Allison powered dragster in the Cal Automotive building, and I was hooked. One morning, my father said, "Hey, how would you like to work on an engine?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, At that time, a lot of my buddies in junior high were getting the monogram plastic V8 engine and building them, and I had one. I got one for Christmas, and with my modeling skills, I soon found out that model cement would gum up anything, and mine would barely crank over. But so again, on the motorcycle, we drove out to one of his buddies' houses, and in the side of the garage was a 283 small block Chevy. And you want it? I was like, yeah, $25. He rolled it out of the back of the truck onto a sheet of cardboard in the garage, and he says, well, there you go, take it apart and learn. And so suddenly I was the only kid in school that actually had an engine in the garage that was his.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I tore into it and tore it apart, and maybe I surprised him, but I said, I want to rebuild this thing. I want to see it work. Had all the machine work done by Haywood at Burbank Speed and Marine, and pretty soon I had a 283 Chevy engine that was going to go in my T-Bucket Roadster. And I had the plans from the magazine, and I quickly learned that it would take more money than my paper route would afford to get the frame put together. And I was running against some time constraints because I was going to be turning 16, and I really needed a vehicle that could get me around that was a little bit more capable of hauling my furniture and motorcycles and all the stuff that a kid has than a T-Bucket Roadster, you know, and I could do it in the rain. And so that's when I went out and got my truck. I quickly got the scratch together to kind of restore it the best I could in 1974. And so late 75, I had my truck, which I still have. I drove that for, many years, and, you know, life took over. But yeah, I've just got a background in automotive stuff.
So there's that part of the story. So now we know how you got into that. Now let's go into the art aspect. So I'm going to assume that you were like a lot of us, that school was not your forte. You were too busy drawing, and you didn't care about the rest of what was going on. You wanted to draw. So is that how you were? Were you one of us?
Yeah.
I messed around in school. So.
I now have a lifetime where I can reflect back on my past, and I could see that the path was kind of, sketched out for me early on. And for various reasons, it was kind of squelched, and it wasn't very clear, but circumstance kind of forced me to accept that this is the way I was wired. And once I realized that, I couldn't deny it, and I put my full effort into it and focused, it clarified, my direction as an artist.
So what was your first job as an artist? Where did you go when you were a kid? You going to school, you went to college, and you kind of worked on your craft there. What was your first art job?
Having been asked to draw the Thanksgiving mural on the bulletin board in 5th grade.
Okay.
It's hard for me to nail down what my first job was, because
well, I was more referring to your actual job, an actual working position as an artist. You messed around with it in school, like most artists do, and
the first job with a paycheck and the time clock,
yes.
That would have been ITT Gilfillan in 1980, November of 1980. I got the job as a junior tech illustrator. My portfolio was geared for illustration, two-dimensional illustration, I had just gotten my degree from Cal State Northridge. It was just the reason for the junior tech illustrator was because it was the first job that was available at the time. I was targeting animation in the San Fernando Valley, and this was in the late 70s, and there was a big strike that had happened, and it had a lot of detrimental effects on the industry as a whole, and a lot of animators wound up working as illustrators in defense. And that was kind of how I was pulled from one world into working for defense. I had to learn really quick how to use the inking pens, and because I was trained to work with brushes and all sorts of different stuff, but being a tech illustrator and working on Mylar with inking pens was a totally different world.
Well, now you're covering both, though. I mean, the brushes, and then now the technical end of things.
Well, one thing I've always kept in mind, no matter what the job was, no matter how difficult it was or how boring it was, I always figured that there was something of value that I could train myself in while doing that job that I could take with me anywhere. It was a mindset, paid benefits, because I always saw coworkers that didn't have that mindset. When the job got boring and there was nothing, even though there was nothing better to go to, they would quit and they'd do nothing. But I kind of hung in there, and you get your name going, you get a following, the whole social network. It was different than, in the digital age. Back then it was word of mouth and who knows who, and, somebody down the line, I heard that we're only 6 degrees of separation apart from each other. And that's kind of true. You get known in the industry, you get known in different industries. It just keeps building on itself.
So when you were doing the technical, were you doing like side work? Because you kind of became proficient in airbrush work and going, you kind of were spreading yourself out a little bit. So were you doing side jobs along with your regular job?
Yeah. So I had various accounts like Kaiser Permanente and Alden Butcher Productions, and I was doing cartoon work for Variety Magazine and Hollywood Reporter.
So it still wasn't automotive. It was still industry.
It's
type work.
Yeah. I'd paint and draw for whoever wanted to pay me. I would work all day at Defense and work with the art directors and the engineers, and then I'd come home and I'd kind of do what I wanted. The way that the hot rod painting came about was I wasn't working during the day for the company, and I didn't have freelancing to do at night. So what do? Well, you paint what you want to paint.
You were getting into that, how you made the transition from corporate to the automotive stuff. Was it like airbrush work and fine art with pen stuff, or did you go right to paintings?
I went right to paintings.
Okay.
Because I knew that an oil painting on canvas has an incredible snob factor to it. I mean, that's the most money for what you're going to be putting out.
Okay.
So that's what I went with. And I knew how to paint. I had my first set of oils when I was 12 or so. Yeah, I knew that I wanted to do oil painting, and I had to learn a little bit more about oil painting, like, for instance, a little bit more about the chemistry behind it. And I learned a lot from older artists on how to set the paints up faster and get them to dry quicker and all that good stuff. Yeah, so in regards to my oil painting with the old hot rods, I was working in my garage one afternoon, and I was working on the brakes of my old truck, And my next door neighbor, who just lived right up the hill, came down and he pulled out a seat and sat down next to me, and we were talking about the brakes. He mentioned that disc brakes had been around for a long time, and so the conversation went, well, how long have they been around, T? And he said, well, around the war, before the war. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? He says, we used to run them before the war. Run them where? What's going on? And he goes, well, just a second, I'll go get some pictures and show you. So he went up to his house and came back with a shoebox. And I lifted the lid, and I started going through, and there's these old stained black and white photographs of T racing at El Mirage before the war and after the war. And I was blown away. I mean, I'd been in Southern California my whole life. I knew where El Mirage was. We had picnicked there as a family. We rode bikes, and we saw the three-wheeled sail vehicles racing out there. And I was blown away because I didn't realize that this was going on out there. I had not seen books on it. This was about the time that Don Montgomery's books came out, because T had one of the books. And so he came down with that and was showing it, and I was having this holy crap moment in my life of, I need to paint this. This is something, the inspiration, the imagery, I knew the lighting situation in the Southern California desert, the youth, young men. I had rebuilt my truck. I rebuilt engines. This was me. One of the mantras that I've heard my whole career in school was the art instructor saying, paint who you are, paint what you know. And I was like, wow, I don't know enough about ducks in water or tigers in the grass, but hot rods, I kind of get it. And so I started painting hot rods, doing oil paintings of these pictures that I had. And that's how the whole ball of wax got rolling. How do you sell a painting of a hot rod? Well, that was something that I really didn't know. And trying to find a gallery that deals in automotive art is difficult indeed. So with the young family in tow and Molly just looking to help out any way she could and not knowing any better, I went out and bought a book called The Artist's Market. And at the time, this was all pre-internet days, it was a book that listed every art gallery in the United States by state alphabetically. So I went out and I bought a bunch of the vinyl sheets of, you put slides in that would hold 20 slides, and I took the 20 paintings that I had done and I shot slides of them, color slides, and I had Molly on the IBM Selectric typewriter write a kind of a format introduction letter and a letter that describes what I'm sending you and how to return the slides if you didn't like them. And those would all get in a manila envelope and stamped and sent off to AAA Art Gallery in Anchorage, Alaska, the first one.
Well, that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
That was just a lot of work.
Well, the thing was, I wasn't too smart. I should have sent my first set of slides to an art studio maybe in Detroit, Michigan. So just thinking about it, I had to go through every state until you get down to the M's.
Oh, yeah, car people.
Exactly. So, Bill Mahalik at Hot Rod Galleria in upstate Michigan was the first guy that responded to me. And he said, hey, I got an art show coming up in 3 weeks. "You got anything you can send me?" And I sent him Grit and Glare, which is a 3-foot by 4-foot painting, and it didn't have a frame on it. It was just the raw edged canvas, and he hung it up in the entryway to the gallery, and bam, sold it.
Wow.
And suddenly, I'm in the eyes of all of the artists, the designers, the management, all the automotive folks in Michigan, and that was the linchpin. That's what I should have done at the start.
I need to ask you about your style of work, and I've been watching it forever, and I made the comment about the painter of light thing earlier, and you use the sun for everything. That's like a massive part of how you paint. It's all about light. Everything's reflections, and then also everything's about movement. Even when you have people standing around, they're either walking somewhere or there's some sort of movement going on. There's very rarely I see something here where somebody just sitting in a car. They're just sitting. Usually there's something going on. There's some sort of motion going on. What inspires you to do that? The light is obviously huge, and then movement. What was that? Something that you learned in art class? Was that something that you liked seeing?
I like paintings that make an inference or trying to guide you towards a story. A bowl of apples doesn't do much for me, but a painting that you look at and you read into it that something is going to happen or something has happened, and what was that? What are they discussing? Human interaction. There's, in a painting, it's the shortest short story you can ever create. In Southern California, what have we got? We've got light and color. You go outside, and the 364 days out of the year, it's brilliant sunlight and long shadows, short shadows, all sorts of opportunity to throw color in. Yeah, it's just, my eye enjoys color handled well. It can provide surprises. It can provide, color has such a broad spectrum. It has such a broad ability to.
I found a deep one here. This is a deep one.
The language is such a poor descriptor of visual phenomenon.
Great way to tell it.
I struggle with the words to describe what I'm trying to tell people. Color is the symphony behind the story. Like I said, it provides. It sets the stage. It sets the mood. It sets the emotion. We're working with hot rod. We're working with intensity. We're working with speed. We're working with physical feeling. The thump on the chest, the eyes getting pushed back into the sockets, your cheeks being pulled back around your teeth, that kind of thing. The smells. It can be brutal. It can be an incredible dance. It's just a powerful source of imagery for me.
This is truly wonderful. I see your artwork, and I'm an artist, but you look at it way more in depth than I do. I love colors, and I love what colors can make something. You can change the attitude just with colors.
With hot rods, with my figure work, how a figure is posed on a car. I go through a lot of the preliminary research of posing models. Consider this, that a car was designed with a seat in it because you wanted someone to sit comfortably in that seat and to operate the vehicle. That was the reason why the seat was designed the way it was, and it's positioned where it is in a car. And to take a model and to try to force them to sit in the car or to lean on a car or to somehow position that model within or on a car that wasn't designed for that function is as painful as it looks. And I don't want to do a painting that is painful. So I make sure when a guy's sitting in a car or doing something that he feels comfortable and he exudes comfort, because I don't want you to look at the painting and say it's either not authentic or it's so painful I don't even want to look at it any longer.
The couple that's getting out of the woody and they're walking down to the beach with their surfboards.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's always this kind of like you said, there's a story there, and but it doesn't look painful. They're carrying their surfboards down the side of the hill. They're going to go surfing. So there's kind of always something going on. Whether I think you did one that was somebody was stuck and they were pulling them out of the muck.
For instance, the one you're describing about getting the Model T out of the mud with the horses.
Yes.
Okay. The basis for that painting was, as an artist, I can paint anything. I wanted a painting that I could take to Pebble Beach, to hang on the wall, and it would be the one painting that perhaps would be least likely to be entered into a competition on about fine automotive, fine automobiles. That's the reason you're there at Pebble Beach.
Right. And
so I thought it would be great to hang a painting of one of the most utilitarian vehicles up to its pumpkin in wet, sloppy mud and getting yanked out by a couple of Percherons. That I wanted a painting where you could smell sweat and horse, a sweaty horse and mud and exhaust. And I wanted a painting that you could hear chains jingling and leather creaking and mud being slopped again. I wanted a picture with huge angles in it of motion and power.
Did you get the reaction you wanted with it at Pebble Beach?
It got the best of show. Yeah. It was a challenge. It was a personal challenge. I love challenging myself. Okay. With the imagery. I love color. I love challenging myself with composition, all that stuff. Just to make the story.
You were talking about light and motion. So one of the there's so many pictures that I just love because of the light. The light is such a big deal. And with my friends, we've talked about the old front engine dragsters that have the spokes, and every spoke is telling a story. You look at that and you can go, wow, that wheel has got 47 different reflections going on. All the spokes are moving, and it's the focal point of the painting, and you can't miss it. It's right there. So,
how?
You obviously like movement. That's a huge part of who you are.
That was another challenge, and that was a painting that was in my lineup to go hang at the Automotive Fine Art Society premier exhibition every year at Pebble Beach. That was the Greer Black Perdome dragster. And the story behind that, I had my eyeball on it for several years. So I went to Wally Park's memorial that night at the NHRA Museum. And where I was sitting in the end hall there, I could turn my head and look down into the darkened hall, and there was the Greer Black Perdome dragster. And Greg Sharp was nearby, and I said, "Hey, Greg, could I get up and run down there and take some reference?" And so Greg said, "Yeah." So I went down I dropped the ropes and took some reference for the painting. The challenge in that painting was, number one, it was going to hang at the Pebble Beach again. So here's a car that I wanted to toss up in front of the attendees there and say, hey, check this out. And it got to the front wheels and the spinning spokes. And again, another challenge. My entire career, there is a way, a convention of a spinning propeller, a spinning bicycle tire, the conventional way of describing that motion. And every time I looked at a spoke wheel spinning, I didn't see that convention. That wasn't my experience. And all I've got is a moment in time to get on canvas what my impression is. If you were ever on a street in your neighborhood Christmas morning when every kid got a new bicycle and they're running up and down the street on their new bike and those spokes are just glinting, that's not the convention I see in the cartoons or that illustrative convention. I wanted to capture that, what I saw. And so I did the best I could with, and hung it on the wall, and that was the best of show.
Another thing, back when we had talked before, and it blew me away because I don't know anybody else that had done it, is postage stamps. How does one get commissioned to do postage stamps? How did that come about?
It's not a job that you sign up for or you apply for. For me, the way it happened, Art Fitzpatrick, everybody knows Art Fitzpatrick, the Pontiac ads in the 60s. So Art Fitzpatrick was a fellow member in the Automotive Fine Art Society with me. And just a great guy. I had a great relationship with him. He was funny. He was brusque, but just a great old guy. And at the show that I showed the Greer Black Prudhomme dragster at, he pulled the number out of the hat and drew the booth right across the aisle from me. And it was one of the first times I met Art. And he sat in his director's chair almost the whole show, just staring at that painting, and didn't say a word. And we make eye contact. People are coming and going all day. And finally, it kind of relaxed in the afternoon, and I went up and we had a great discussion. And he started talking to me about the color yellow and shadows in yellow and how did I paint yellow, and he loved that, and the spokes. And I just developed this great relationship with him. Art had he did 2 or 3 series of stamps with the post office on cars of the 50s or cars with fins on them, or I forgot what they were. And the post office wanted to come back to Art and wanted another series. Well, Art was getting pretty old, and he didn't think he had another one in him, and he said, no, I'm going to turn it down. And so they said, well, can you recommend somebody? And boom. And
that's a pretty amazing compliment.
Thank you. Wow. What an honor.
Right?
So I didn't know this, but so I'm sitting here in the studio painting away, and the phone rings. You bend down, you pick it up, and Tom, this is Carl Herman from the U.S. Postal Service. Would you like to do a series of stamps on muscle cars? Well, what do you say?
Wait, who is this?
Yeah. No, I'm busy.
No.
No, prank, right? No, so, of course, let's talk. And so that's how that came about. And yeah, that was a great project. And from that project, they called back and wanted me to do the pony car stamps.
So how many have you done? How many stamps?
10 stamps, 2 series. And for me, the pinch yourself thing is that the originals are in the National Postal Museum at the Smithsonian Institute. So that, you know.
I'm like humbled right now. Like to have anything in the Smithsonian is pretty amazing, and something that's put on letters is crazy cool.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those out of body, out of mind notions for me. You know.
Have you been there to see them? Did you go back there to see them?
No, I painted them.
You got to check that off on your list to go see them at the Smithsonian. I mean, come on.
Probably, yeah.
I was going to ask, what would be your pinnacle? When you start taking Best to Show at Pebble Beach, and then you got stuff in the Smithsonian, you kind of hit every goal you ever wanted to set. I mean, is there anything you haven't done yet that you really want to do?
In all honesty, it was another commercial job. It was a client, and you know, it was a collaboration. I had art directors to work with, but as an artist, it was another job, and I'm honored that they wound up where they are. The whole process was an honor, but you know, I've got other paintings I want to see, and let's get to them.
So you're still chasing these whatever you want, goals. We won't even call them goals.
Sure.
Just things you want to see finished. What's it going to look like done?
Right.
So you don't sleep. You don't sleep well at night. You lay in bed going, what could this look like? What could?
Yeah, you wake up in the middle of the night, stuck in a problem or stuck in the painting, and sometimes you come down to fix it, or you have to address it, or if you don't write it down, you're going to lose it. That happens. It's immersive. I'm totally absorbed in it. You know, there's the downside. My son, for his entire life, I was there for 2 birthdays, because the rest of the time I was at the show back in Michigan. I mean, so that has its weight, you know.
Right.
It's but yeah, I mean, so there's, you know, it this is life. You know, it's life.
Yeah, you got this Shelby sitting here behind us.
Well,
and
this is
one of the first. So what's this all about?
This is a look. This is how I start a painting. I've done my initial drawing, the drawing underneath, and I tone the canvas because I don't want to fight the white. Meaning that if this was just a white sheet of canvas up here, the first brush stroke that you put down is probably going to become too dark because you're fighting the values. So I kick the values down to a nice warm middle value. That in and of itself brings a warm glow through the piece at the end of the painting. This is Peter Brock standing behind the first Daytona coupe. Car people, bike people, a lot of transportation art. Technical precision is key. You know, you've got to have the car look like the car, or it ain't going to sell.
Absolutely.
I'm not too concerned about painting a wheel or painting, a window or a steering wheel. I'm more concerned with painting individual abstract shapes and putting shapes up against shapes, and that's how I keep the painting loose and spontaneous looking. Yeah, what I'm trying to paint here is a poem, not a dissertation.
That's a great way to look at it. A poem, not a dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
So is this kind of how you tackle all your paintings, kind of with that attitude, going, this is what I'm sneaking up to, this is my final...
Get them involved. I can paint every edge in this painting with crisp, sharp detail, just refined, crisp. Your eyeball doesn't work that way. Your eyeball will focus on what it's looking at the time. Everything else is peripheral. It starts losing edges. And remember what I was talking about painting every damn brick in that building?
Right.
I'm not gonna. You can fill in that information yourself. You know that every damn brick is gonna be in that building. But there's no reason for me to beat it into your head that yes, every brick is in its place.
So you focus on what you want to focus on. You don't need to worry about the bricks or the windows in the background. They're kind of irrelevant to the picture.
I can lead your eye around. You know, there's things in here, there's nuance that I'm working from black and white photographs, so essentially I can make the painting any color I want. So I'm not constrained by looking at the world the way Mr. Kodak wants me to look at it. The other thing is it's like watching an orchestra play. There's going to be some violins or the cello, but you're not going to watch that orchestra, every musician playing the same tune, the same time, the same volume. You know, you've got to make one or two stand out and everybody else kind of supports it. That's what I try to do.
It's so funny. I never looked at a painting as a story. It never, I mean, I will now. Make me look at art a whole
It's fun to set them up.
Way to look at it.
It's fun to set them up because I get to play with props. You know, an old Coke bottle here, an old helmet there, empty Coke bottle laying on its side. You know, try to get the Coke bottles to relax and feel apart, not like they've been placed there, plunked there, or just, you know, happenstance. Just, yeah, it's
just where it is in part of the picture, just there.
That's the fun part of my job. I found it in my career very important to when I get an assignment or a project or when I challenge myself to take the time to do the research and learn everything I can about the subject matter or what I'm trying to describe or get across, and that has always helped me. In school, I learned that a wheel is round and that I don't have to recreate the wheel every time.
Tom, thank you for sitting down with me.
My
Very
pleasure,
much.
man.
It's
Honored.
great.
I was honored.
Instead of trying to introduce all the crew members on Stories in Steel, we figured it would be easier to show our audience a picture of us in action, and we turned it into a poster. Click on the link to purchase the complete set of one.